When it comes to the Fire in Sight, to me, it's that black girl coming of age story that you've been waiting on. Just instead of it being somebody from the suburbs who's on their way to college, having their first boyfriend and all that, it's about a girl from Flint, Michigan who discovered boxing and that utterly changed her life alongside a man named Jason who invested in her. Get into a bit of a better summary. The movie covers from like 2006 to about 2016, so about 10 years. And through it, we watch as Claressa Sheilds, who's 11 in 2006. She runs to this gym that is ran by a man named Jason Crutchfield. She shows herself to be determined and consistent, but it's 2006, and in Jason's mind, women's boxing is not really a thing, never mind a thing to really invest his time in. So with that in mind, he most of the time blows off, but as time goes on, he starts to really take note of what she's willing to do and also of her story. Because when we learn about Claressa's home life, her dad is in and out of prison, her mom has struggles, which aren't necessarily made clear of what specific kind of struggles, and on top of that, she has two younger siblings. She's the oldest of three. But as time goes on and the struggles continue, you see Claressa get more and more into boxing, and this becomes sort of like her potential escape. Similar to how we see people get into basketball, become singers, and that be the way to get out of their situation. And like those people, a lot is riding on Claressa being successful. And she does what she's supposed to. She works hard, eats properly, has a community behind her, and she walks her way to the Olympics. The thing is, as she learns for a lot of women's sports, you can be the best in your city, state, country, potentially even the world. But when it comes to women's sports, unless it's something that can be made or rather sexualized, like they do women's volleyball, like they do soccer to a certain point, getting the money that comes with the recognition of your skill is difficult, and the movie tries to really hone in on the issues that come from being one of the greatest as a woman, not getting the money that the men often get, and trying to figure out, is it better to just settle for the life that you could have or to continue working hard for the life that clearly you can excel in. So getting to the review portion, the first highlight for me is just Jason's investment in Claressa, and that's because, well, I would say it's because for a few reasons. First and foremost, it's about watching him change his mind about women's boxing, and then from there take on this girl who's clearly had it rough, to the point where he tries to congratulate and touch her, she backs off and very scared. And you see, watching him kind of not expect her to make the adjustments, but kind of adjust to her in some ways, especially because he kind of sees herself in him. He sees herself. You know what I'm trying to say. There's this connection between them that makes it so, even though eventually Claressa's father comes into her life in the movie, you see this sort of coach and trainee father-daughter kind of bond that really is touching, and at its best, it shows that Claressa had something in her. She just needed direction, protection, the sense that someone got her, and watching Jason provide that for her could be one of the potential reasons you may find yourself crying a little bit while watching this. Following that up, another highlight for me, especially as somebody who watches movies like this, is technically there's no white savior involved. When it comes to Claressa's life, the majority of the people are black. Even when Jason is unable to come with her to do some things like the Olympics, her coach is a black woman. Someone who may not necessarily get what Claressa's trying to do or know how to really talk to Claressa like Jason learns how, but no matter where you look at it, a black person is usually there with her, mentoring her, really getting her to where she needs to go. The only exception is when it comes to her getting the business side of her career going, and that's just because, as is established in the movie, Jason may have gotten to certain places when he was boxing, but getting those connections to really take Claressa to the next level is hard. And like anybody who's an entrepreneur, especially a black person, entrepreneur will tell you, you could have all the talent, the education, everything that you're supposed to have, but the lack of a network, the lack of distribution, the lack of even production, depending on what you're talking about, that's going to be what kind of screws you over, especially because you're going to have to pay top dollar price for things. You're not going to be able to get into certain places that you need to get to if you want to really be successful. And it's pretty much about working your way up. But getting back to the point, when it comes to this movie, what Jason tried to do for a lot of it is do right by Claressa, get her shirts, endorsements, and all that. But again, women's boxing, they tell us in the movie straight up, you can't sexualize it because it's women beating on each other. And because of that, Jason doesn't know how to change, revert the narrative, anything like that. And even though he knows how to speak Claressa, who is definitely a little bit rough around the edges, there comes a point where he has to use somebody's network who knows what to do, knows who to talk to in order to get Claressa to a point where she can get some form of parity with men, or at least make it so that things aren't as bad as it was when she got her first gold medal and had nothing to show up for besides this piece of gold that she could barely even get to pawn. Which leads to the last highlight, and that's just getting to see a coming-of-age story which is starring a black girl. Now, don't get me wrong. There are coming-of-age stories featuring black girls. For example, Kenya Barris in his Ish series has that in multiple characters. And I would even submit in terms of Delilah on Equalizer, we got that. And lest we forget, This Is Us also had coming-of-age story for a black girl through Sterling Brown's kids, whose name I can't remember offhand. But one of the things you notice as a pattern with all those stories is that the focus isn't solely on a black girl. Never mind, not to go into all that, but on someone who isn't biracial or ambiguous. Claressa Sheilds is black, no questions about it. And on top of that, she's not someone that's middle or upper class. She is from Flint, Michigan. They show throughout the movie that they don't necessarily show it like a hood, like they don't show like there's drug deals and stuff like that, but you get a sense that while it's very much about community, there could be some people about that life. But for the most part, they just show this is an area that hasn't had much investment. And with that in mind, you get a very rare story that, similar to what we talked about when it came to A Brewster's Millions Christmas, when it comes to Opal, you get to see a type of depiction of black life that often feels neglected because they want to show that sort of Cosby show, everything's beautiful, we're moving on up to the east side type of life. But this is different. And I'm glad that its focus is mainly on Claressa and showing that even though things were hard, at the same time, she was able to overcome it. And they don't make it into like this overly inspirational story that you keep believing yourself, then you can do anything. Through the coming of age, you see her learn that hard work does have its dividends and rewards, but at the same time, there's no guarantees. And you have to learn how to rely on people, feel safe around people, or allow yourself to be vulnerable with the right person in order to get to some places in your life. And on top of that, when it comes to advocating for yourself, it's sometimes going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to be like, I believe, I think it was Kris Jenner said it when she was talking to RuPaul, where if you hear no from someone, you're talking to the wrong person. You're going to sometimes have situations like that, or where you're going to have to talk to the same person and let them know, you know your value, you know your worth, and this is what we're going to do because what you just said right there, we're not going to do that. And yes, it does feel like a very different coming of age story because you don't see Claressa get coddled as much as you often do, especially when it comes to coming of age stories dealing with girls. But again, it's so rare to see a black girl get a coming of age story, never mind a biopic one, which makes you know that this is some fantasy world but it's something real. And you not only see them be the focus, it be a movie, but also it's not a movie that's like Sundance or Tribeca Film Festival, where at best it's going to come on to some streaming service and disappear. This is getting marketing behind it. This is getting a theatrical release. And while I honestly can't imagine it getting like Oscar accolades or anything like that, at the same time, I do believe this does set things up when it comes to Raya Destiny's future. It definitely shows there's more to her and what she's capable of. And I hope, similar how we thought Black Panther, or at least hope Black Panther, would lead to a slew of more black leads, especially when it came to the superhero genre, which kind of didn't happen, but different story. But I'm hoping when it comes to what happens after this movie, it'll show in startup. What am I trying to say? I'm hoping that this leads to be inspiration for other creatives, producers, distributors to really put time, effort, and money into stories like Clarissa's or just black girls in general, so that instead of being supporting characters more often than not for black boy stories where they end up being a love interest or nothing much more than a mom, an aunt, or whatever, the story's about them, what they go through, them growing up, how they went from little girls playing with dolls to women being badasses, and provide a more diverse set of examples than what we often get. So getting to the on the fence topic, we have two, and the first one is that as much as we recognize the importance of focusing on Claressa Sheilds, especially because, again, there's a very huge scarcity of movies and even shows that just focus on a black girl coming of age and not having to share the spotlight with a bunch of other people, usually in some type of diverse environment. I have to admit, for a handful of characters, a part of me wished that they did more to kind of explain what was going on with them. For example, with Jason, they go enough into his boxing career to establish that he is qualified to be a coach. But as for what happened to his boxing career, I feel like either they just rushed right past it and I didn't notice, or they just skipped over it entirely. Then when it comes to Clarissa's mom, a part of me wanted to kind of figure out, is this supposed to be another situation like when we see her hometown where it's like, if you get it, you know? Or is this a case of me relying on stereotypes and assumptions to kind of put together what I believe her mom's going through? And that kind of made me feel a little bit funny because I was like, so is her mom an addict or maybe a recovering addict? Does her mom have disability issues or what's going on here? Because her mom reads like some stereotypical type of moms, especially if you grew up or adjacent to that type of life, but you can't really put a pin on what's going on there. And that, again, it kind of leads to that push and pull between, Claressa is what's the hook when it comes to this movie, and again, scarcity makes it so you should really just focus on her, but there are so many times and moments when you just want to kind of get an idea of not just her coming of age story, but what were these other people's journeys to get to this point and to make these decisions as part of her life. The second on the fence topic deals with the ending, and I think to begin, you gotta recognize one of the issues with the ending is that Claressa's 29 years old. She is maybe in her prime or entering her prime, so it feels like a very odd point to be doing a biopic about her life. And granted, the movie itself covers 10 years, so that's a lot of time to cover, and for the most part, it uses the time well. But the way things end with this is so much on an ellipsis, and not only that, it ends with her working toward her second gold medal and then flips into showing archival footage of her doing so, and then next thing you know, she has all these belts from when she turned pro. But in my mind, you would think that they would also show her going pro in those fights as well, because I think she has at least I think when she was on Breakfast Club, she had at least 4 or 5 belts. And my thing is that transition from Olympic fighting, well, fighting toward to being Olympics to being a professional boxer, how different is that? Are they, when it comes to industry-wise, is the industry toward the Olympics the same as being pro? There's a lot of things that you want to question and know about, and when it comes to the final side, it's not made like a Lifetime movie. You don't get a sense that this is part 1 and part 2 is going to come out next year or the year after. This feels very much like it's supposed to be the definitive biopic. So the question is, are they going to make additional ones later on? Will it be connected to this? It's hard to say, but as much as I understand that maybe this is supposed to be like a teaser, similar to how when it comes to anime, it's supposed to be a teaser for you to actually buy the manga. I I don't know. And granted, does the ending ruin the movie? No, but it does leave you wanting more in a way that makes it feel like you kind of get the rug pulled under you just as you're starting to really get into the next build up to the next pedestal or big moment in Claressa's life. But overall, to be very honest, do I see this as something that should be considered something that's gonna be, well, it didn't get nominated for a Golden Globe. Do I see this as something that's gonna get Oscar nominations or anything like that? No. NAACP award, probably. Spirit Award in terms of that arena, maybe if Amazon Productions qualify, but what really matters when it comes to Fire Inside is that it presents a quality story featuring a black girl coming of age in a way that doesn't fit the usual conventions of her being middle class, upper class, whatever, but someone who comes from a working class or even the straight up poor family, and her making her way. And being that there's so few depictions of black girls getting to grow up on any type of filmed media, television, movies, whatever, never mind to get a budget and have the black girl center stage rather than part of an ensemble, never mind a diverse ensemble, and the black girl not be someone that's ambiguous in terms of a racial ethnic identity, but is clearly a black girl. There's so much good here that when it comes to some of the things that may be like a little like the ending, or you kind of wishing they developed the supporting characters a little bit better, you can easily forgive it because what are the options you have? One, and two, look at how often things like this are done. So it makes you want to support it so that hopefully other people get inspired by it. They see that it is possible to be made and they really push their own stuff. People see that there's an audience, a market for it, and we can continue to have more diverse depictions of what it means to be a black person, a black woman, a black girl, rather than it seem, as it has been for a long time, where pretty much if you want to see a coming of age movie about a black person, all you would have is the black boy experience. Maybe, on a rare occasion, the black queer experience, but usually, again, that's from what boys go through.